I'd like to take it at bat from, if I may. Uh, I So I
Hang on a
mentioned.
second and let me do the announcement for the beginning of the video. Hello, everybody who's on sees this video on YouTube. This is Saturday morning, September the 9th or the 10th. Saturday in the U.S. it's on Friday evening, and we've got quite a crowd of about 13. So, Eric, you were about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, for a long time I thought I was depressed. In fact, I was depressed, and now I'm into something that's a little darker than that. And I think
Yes, I
that,
can barely see you.
and I think I've been looking uh, into what I'm going through, and the best. I think the most appropriate thing that I found is what's been referred to as the dark night of the soul, and I kind of lost interest in doing. I kind of lost interest in everything. It's been a couple, like more than a month now, and it turns out that this is uh, a long known phenomenon, starting with Saint John of the Cross, and 1,000 years ago or so, who went through something like this. And it's not uncommon for spiritually minded folks to go through it. In fact, I just this evening found a posting from a Catholic priest who did a video on it. Um,
All right, so
and
we can add in Dark Night of the Soul to our conversation.
yeah, I like,
Have
yeah.
Okay, there's already several videos on Dark Night of the Soul, and one of them actually was transcribed, and it's an article that's under the About menu on the web site, the OpenSanghaFoundation.org. Have you seen that one?
I have not. I will go to the site.
All right. So, meanwhile, we'll go ahead and talk about it. Uh, let's talk about that first, and then we'll get into basic practice. And the reason that I do it that way is because I can say most specifically that the dark night of the soul occurs commonly when there is no correct practice. And that Christians are likely to have that because they don't even know what correct practice is. So let's look at the dark night of the soul from the Christian perspective first, and then we'll talk about it from the Buddhist perspective. All right. Within Christianity, the dark night of the soul happens because the kind of practice that they do does not yield the kind of results that they want. An example of that would be Mother Teresa. They read in her memoirs that were published about 20 years or so after she died. And in those memoirs, it showed that she had been in the dark night of the soul all the time while she was dealing with big money, that she wound up having some big donators, but instead of taking the donation money and doing what she was originally doing, like helping people in Bangkok, in Calcutta, most specifically dealing with pregnant women who were out on the street, and she was taking them in. But when she got the big money, she was basically saying, the hell with those people. They need to suffer. I'm going to go build a great big monastery and have a great big place named after me with lots of nuns contributing to my ego. And that the reason that she had gone into that kind of state, or the dark night of the soul, was that she was talking to Jesus, and maybe he answered her once or twice, but then he didn't answer her anymore. Where is my Jesus? All of these monks and nuns talk about they have a personal relationship with Jesus. I think that's kind of amazing because he's been dead for 2,000 years. But still, they have a conversation in their head with Jesus. and that a bit of reality set in for Mother Teresa to realize that Jesus didn't talk back. All right. And because he didn't talk back, that made her feel like that she wasn't worthy, or basically in the context of Buddhism, there is fear, misery, disgust, anguish, followed into despair. Now, despair is actually the keynote that makes it a dark night of the soul. You can, in fact, say clinical depression is nothing but a state of despair. That, in fact, clinical depression is a layperson's dark night of the soul. And that dark night of the soul is labeled as clinical depression and therefore not seen as a spiritual issue, but it's basically the same thing. And that is, what is it really mean is, I don't get what I want. Oh, poor me. And those are the kind of thoughts that they have over and over again, putting them into a state of despair. Now, the problem with Christianity in that regard is that the despair is, I'm not getting the spiritual experiences that I want, and they cannot get the experience that they want by going to their mentor or a senior priest or whatever, who will help them understand that they're not going to get what they want. They're just not going to get what they want. That, in fact, that's deep, deep dukkha, is to keep wanting something, thinking that you should have it, and don't have it. In Sister Teresa's or Mother Teresa's example of, Jesus doesn't talk back to me. I think that's kind of funny, because the teachers that I went to in grade school, they didn't want the students to talk back to them. But she was unhappy because Jesus wouldn't talk to her. So that's the whole point about the dark night of the soul. Now, there is a document in Buddhism that's called the 16 Stages of Insight, where these statements are that fearfulness, misery, disgust, despair, and anguish are actually listed, followed by a strong determination to get out of it. And then that strong determination to get out of it is then followed by a redoubling of the effort to practice correctly. And that leads them back into the Four Noble Truths. So the despair that the Buddhists have has basically shining light at the end of the tunnel. And that is the possibility of correct practice, to where in Christianity, there is no shining light at the end of the tunnel, because, in fact, most possibly, their mentor or their head priest is stuck in the same situation that they are. That I would say that dark night of the soul within the Christian context is very common. With not getting what you want, something like Jesus doesn't talk to me, or God doesn't float me through the air, or other things like this that the priests are wanting, or maybe he doesn't bring me enough 14-year-old girls, whatever they want and don't get. And wanting it over and over again puts one in despair, no matter whether they're a spiritual person or an ordinary person. Not getting what one wants. That point, then, is actually quite basic as the definition of dukkha, which was the primary teaching of the Buddha. He says he only teaches one thing. And what the Buddha teaches is one thing is dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Dukkha is defined as dissatisfaction. And the primary way that people are dissatisfied is by not getting what they want. Now, we can also see that there's some really big kinds of dukkha, like old age, sickness, and death. People don't want to get old. How many people here really like and relish the fact that they're getting old? And if you're lucky, you might make it to 80 or 90, or maybe even 100 if you're really lucky. That in fact, the only way that you're going to avoid old age is by being unlucky enough to die before you get old. So, old age is dukkha for almost all people because they don't like getting old. How many of you really like getting old? Eric, do you like getting old?
No, I like being young.
All right. That's a source of dukkha. Can you be young?
Yes, in many ways, I am very young. I'm profoundly immature, in fact.
No, that's not what I'm talking about because you've already said that you don't like not being young. So you can think young thoughts, you can do young things, you can go out and play football, but you don't like the fact that while you're playing football or whatever, the body doesn't do it the way that it did when you were actually young. The body gets old and you can't stop that. Do you like your body getting old?
No.
No. Can you make your body young?
Well, I'm actually in pretty good shape in a lot of ways. But no, I don't think I think the answer is no. You can't make your body young. You cannot.
All right. That's what I'm getting at. You want something you can't have. And look how hard you're trying to make it true when you know, in fact, you can't make it true.
Yes,
And in
it's a good
fact, that,
point because my life is one of great abundance. I have so much. I mean, I'm so fortunate and so privileged, and yet I'm so taken by this, emptiness.
mm-hmm, right. That in fact, that emptiness that you speak of happens with everybody. In fact, the dark night of the soul is when things get really empty.
Yes,
Really
exactly.
empty. Pardon?
Yeah, it's like my life kind of ended, and like and I wasn't dead yet, and like I feel like, sheesh, what the
Mm-hmm.
hell happened to me?
Well, there, the Buddhist concept then of that emptiness is the Buddha teaches that everything is empty, which gives you a sense of vastness rather than a sense of despair.
Yes,
It
and but
depends upon your attitude.
to a large degree, I'm suffering from the social conditioning that uh, empowered me to survive 67 years. It was a means of managing the circumstance that I was born into, and then all the utility of those skills and socially enforced things that I didn't really that were forced upon me. Uh, I got to the point where I no longer needed them, and I saw how they were harming me, and how I needed to let go of these parts of myself that I no longer needed or wanted, the ugly parts of myself, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so the emptiness uh, is to some degree uh, a liberation and a spiritual affirmation, but nonetheless, I'm still I have to serve my wife. I have to do all the labor of self care, and I kind of resent it.
Mm-hmm. This is what we were talking about with that resentment. That in fact the state of despair has a huge amount of resentment in it. The dark night of the soul has a huge amount of resentment in the sense that Mother Teresa, she resented that Jesus wouldn't talk to her. She didn't like it. She wanted him to talk, and he didn't talk back to her. And because of that, she kind of lost her spirituality completely doing the good stuff that she was doing in Calcutta and became kind of a businesswoman in the business of building monasteries and building up an organization because she wasn't getting what she wanted from Jesus. Well, people who are practicing various Buddhist meditations when they're not practicing correctly, they do have that kind of dark night of the soul themselves, in the sense of the fearfulness, the misery, the disgust, the despair, the anguish. And that sense of despair also has that quality of resentment. Look how hard I prayed, Jesus. Can't you answer me? That resentment is there. All right. So within the Buddhist context, it's always followed by the recognition that they're not practicing correctly. That in fact, in the original document with the 16 stages of insight, the first part of the stages is that people are noting the reality of their mind, and they begin to see that everything that they think just rots away immediately. Everything dissolves. There's nothing left. And they don't like that a bit. They think that they're supposed to get some value out of their practice of noting. So they note an unwholesome thought and note another unwholesome thought and note another unwholesome thought. And all it leads to is just the habit of more and more unwholesome thoughts. And they don't like that a little bit. And so they go into this dark night of the soul. Hopefully, some magic teacher can point out to them that they have the responsibility, that they have to change those unwholesome thoughts that they have that keep coming up and falling away, coming up and busting apart. And that the actual correct practice, getting into it from the perspective of correct practice that the Buddha actually talks about, the Eightfold Noble Path, which is part of the Four Noble Truths, has a very important point to it, and that is right noble effort to change our thoughts. And if we don't change our thoughts, we're going to go into a dark night of the soul. We are going to go into a depression. In fact, everybody who doesn't go into a depression is because they change their unwholesome thoughts that would lead them over and over again. Those thoughts would lead them into a state of depression. Like, my
Well,
mommy doesn't love me. But somewhere along the line, they're going to have thoughts like, well, I don't love her back. So maybe that's why she doesn't love me. And begin to take your own personal responsibility. Or maybe, well, I can go find a girl that'll love me. I don't need my mommy to love me. You're about to say something, Eric.
well, to some degree, maybe I indulge in some unwholesome thoughts. On the other hand, I also aspire to serving higher power and to being useful to uh, the world in general, and the people immediately in my life. Of course, again, I'm
Ours.
doing my best to take care of my wife, but I feel like with all this education I have, with all knowledge I have, with all the vision I had towards, uh, you know making a contribution, a tangible contribution, and I think to a large extent, I think like my wife said, I do great as long as I have a cheerleader. So I think there's a lot of egotism involved with
Yes.
seeking affirmation of others. And I
Mm-hmm.
haven't really. I think that's the hard nut for me to let go of it. But and all these things have been with me for all my life. So uh, yeah, I think. Uh, to some degree, maybe it really is all unwholesome thoughts for me. I want to believe that I, have a relationship with the Almighty, but that would carry me out of this, and that I'll see my way through to serving the Almighty in a way that's mutually satisfying. It's, I get glimpses of that, and it helps me, but still, I'm in my rut.
Well, the first thing that I will mention is that there is more than one Almighty. The first one, and one that we need to start paying attention to, is reality itself. Another way of talking about it is that you live in paradise. You live in the Almighty. You live in reality, but you can't change it. That's why I'm calling it and referring to it as Almighty. Here's another one. The Democratic Party in the United States is almighty. Why? Because you can't change it. The government of the United States is almighty. It goes around changing, but you can't change it. You can't walk into Washington, walks into the White House and sit down in the Oval Office and says, I run this place now. That's not going to happen. So you can go so far as then to say society itself is almighty because you can't change it. And yet everyone as a child is taught that you've got to contribute, you've got to help, you've got to fix. Our society is broken, and it's your job to contribute to society. Now, one thing is for sure is right here, right now in this discussion, no one here, especially not me, is contributing to society. That's not
that's
what
not.
I have here.
Well, I think Mikey is.
No, Mikey is not contributing to society. At best, he's just enjoying himself. If you
Well, shame
enjoy
on you,
what you,
Mikey, enjoying yourself like that.
you're on stage, Mike. I'm listening, Mikey.
You know,
I
why
mean,
can't
if you
I be more like
consider
Mikey? He's always
if you
helping.
consider the Sangha society, yeah, we could call that a form of contributing to society, right? But Sangha sort of exists as a way for us to get away from what one would commonly label as society. So chilling out, vibing, participating in Sangha, just enjoying the Dhamma talk, enjoying oneself, enjoying the emptiness, having wholesome thoughts. That's what's worth contributing.
Right, contributing to your own mind state and sharing that mind state of joy and happiness with others. That's the only contribution, and it's really not a contribution because I can sit here and talk Dhamma and be happy and joyful, and some people will watch and say, you're not contributing to me. And so there's no reason for me to become in the state of despair because my contribution doesn't work for some or most people. In fact, from what I have heard, I have a grand following of haters. I probably have more people who hate me than who love me. But that's okay with me. I've been hated before. In fact, when I was in grade school and in high school, I was really hated there. I was hated in high school a whole lot more than I'm hated now. So I can handle the hatred now. We put that under the label of been there, done that. But we think that we're contributing to society where in fact we're not. Even if I say something that is spectacularly profound for someone, that's because it strikes them that way and they're contributing to their own mind. I didn't do it. They did it. This is, in fact, what the point about the second noble truth. The first noble truth is there is dukkha. There is dissatisfaction, and that dissatisfaction has a cause to it. And the cause is we want something we don't have, or we have something we don't want, like flies and mosquitoes and snakes and scorpions and IRS and Trump and Putin. We've got all of that stuff and we don't want it, but we can't get rid of it because it's all part of the Almighty. And so we blame someone else. We blame part of that Almighty for our own misery and disgust and despair and fear, to where in fact it always boils down back to the second noble truth is that it's actually based upon your own ignorance. Because Buddhadasa talks about fear is ignorance, and it comes out of the self-preservation instinct that we're supposed to stay alive. One of the issues that we were talking about old age, people don't like to get old. Why? Because the closer we go through old age, the more likely we're getting closer to death. And we don't like that either. How many people really want to die? How many people are looking forward to dying? Well, I do. I'm looking forward to it. I'm just not going to do it yet. I'm going to let it happen naturally. But when it does happen naturally, oh, thank you. Finally, you've come, Mr. Almighty Death. You don't come, and that's okay. But when you do come, that's really great. Wow, what a relief it is to be out of this place. This body has gotten old. I'm not trying to make it any better, just walking around as best I can in the condition that I'm in. So, in this regard, dukkha has a cause that is created within our own mind, wanting things that we don't have, or having things we don't want. And we blame something outside. We blame old age. We blame sickness. We blame the environment. We blame all kinds of things. And in the regard of what you're talking about, we can just put that in the frame of the Almighty, because it's so mighty that we can't, in fact, change it. One of my favorite examples of that Almighty, that God has got the idea of omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Well, gravity is always here. It's everywhere. It's even between the stars. But here on planet Earth, it's got a factor that, in fact, the air that you breathe wouldn't be here. It would all float off, and you'd die if there wasn't gravity. If you would slip, you're going to fall, because gravity is always watching. It's also so powerful. Look how much work it takes to get a rocket into the air. Can you just rocket yourself into the air? No. So gravity itself is almighty. Gravity's got all of the qualities of God itself. So we can, in fact, accept it the way that it is. I can't change gravity, but I can certainly benefit from it, because it gives me the air that I breathe. So that's the second noble truth, is that we have to take responsibility for creating our own dissatisfaction. We have to take responsibility for our own dissatisfaction. Has a corollary, and that is that everyone in this society has dissatisfaction, and it's not your job to fix it. It's theirs. They cannot fix it by wanting you to fix it for them. You can't fix your own mind by having someone else do it. Only you can fix your own mind, but that's the case with everybody. You can't help anybody. Only they can do that. So the third noble truth is that there is a path out of dissatisfaction. You can just stop being dissatisfied right now and be satisfied. How many of you, by the way, right now are satisfied? Dhammarato, you look pretty satisfied. Mikey, you look satisfied. David, you look pretty satisfied. Alex, you look really satisfied. All right. So we have a choice about that, because some people can be dissatisfied. Scott, how about you? Are you satisfied right now?
I'm satisfied with being dissatisfied.
Yes, because we move in and out of dissatisfaction. We move in and out of dukkha. But when we remember that we don't have to be in dukkha, we can come right out of it. That's the joy of the teaching of the Buddha, is that you can get immediate, instant relief from your own dissatisfaction. And then he has a path to do that. It's called the Eightfold Noble Path, and that we practice that path in stages. The first part of it is that we have to remember to practice. If we don't remember to practice, then the dissatisfactions are just going to be there willy-nilly. In fact, we normally become satisfied only when we get what we want in the moment, but that dissatisfaction is going to come back. because we are not practicing to remove the dissatisfaction. We're practicing to get what we want. And you want one thing, you'll want something else. And in fact, that desire for stuff doesn't go away when you get it fulfilled one time, then it's just going to find something else to want. So if you're wanting stuff over and over again to become satisfied, look how hard you have to work. But if you take the time to remember that you can be satisfied without getting what you want, just by stop wanting it, then that makes the actual path easy to practice. So remembering to really look at what we're doing. It's called right noble view, but almost everyone misunderstands that to be a viewpoint or a worldview or seeing it as a concept or perhaps an ideal. But the actual usage of the term is right noble viewing, a verb, to do it, to look right now. Okay? The example what I would say is there's two kinds of police investigations. One is the investigating, where the cop is out there collecting evidence. And then the other kind of investigation is a file folder full of stuff that he wrote down and put into a file cabinet. That's an investigation. And that's mostly the way that we think of an investigation, as something that's finished, done, and filed away. That's a viewpoint. That's a worldview. That's a concept. But what we really need to do is look at what's happening right now. If you're in paradise, see that you're in paradise right now. If you're in a state of despair, see that despair right now. If you're in a state of wanting something that you don't have, see that state. Now, normally we can say that the mind has two major states: the state of the victim wanting stuff, and the state of the champion who is satisfied with the way things are. And we have to practice changing our state of mind from wanting something into the state of being satisfied. And if we keep practicing that over and over again, we will go into a state of being successful. Many people get a lot of money and they still don't feel successful. They feel successful at getting the money, but deep down inside, they're still feeling empty. Money doesn't make one happy. Only practicing becoming happy makes one happy. And so this is actually the right noble effort, is to come out of our wants, come out of our desires, come out of our victimhood, and start to practice. Everything is okay. Everything is fine. This almighty universe that we're in, we can't fix it, but we could certainly adapt to it happily. Wow, this almighty is really almighty, and I like it. It's okay. Got no problems with it. Everything is okay. Everything is fine. Not a worry in the world. Got no place to go and nothing to do. I can just relax. This is the attitude, and these are the kind of thoughts that we practice. Okay, so this is what we would mean by practice. Now, a lot of people are introduced to Buddhism with the concept of meditation is something that you do in a meditation hall, squatting on the floor, waiting for the bell to ring. And that's not the correct practice. That's what people do. That's why there is a dark night of the soul, is because they're sitting there waiting for the bell to ring. And the right way to practice is, I don't need the bell. I'm okay. I can just sit here. And when the bell rings, we can say, wow, I'm really glad the bell rang. Now I can get up and walk away. And I can be happy doing it. So it's actually the practice of changing each unwholesome thought as it comes. That thought of, I wish the bell would ring, is seen and said, oh, look at me. I'm dissatisfied because the bell's not ringing. Let me practice correctly by saying, I see you, Mr. I want the bell, and say, I'm okay without the bell. I'm all right. Wow, there's no place to go and nothing to do, and I can just sit here and be happy. This universe is almighty. This paradise we're in is almighty. I can't fix it, but I can certainly enjoy it. It's our attitude that has to change. And we have to practice having that attitude change because of one point. And that is that from early childhood, I mean, the first thing that an infant does, the first words they say is a cry of despair. I remember there I was sitting in that warm hot tub. Everything was just taken care of. I was fed. I was nourished. I didn't even have to breathe. And all of a sudden, the earthquake happened. The bottom dropped out. And the next thing I know, Dr. Young had me held up by the heels, beating my ass. Well, I let out a yell so loud, I cried, I screamed. I didn't even stop screaming until I was about 35 years old. And that's what happens to most of us. We scream. The first thing that happens is we don't like being born. Mom don't like it much either. We don't like being born. We don't like the fact that we can't use our hands. We can't feed ourselves. We can't go to the toilet on our own. They put a diaper on us. We can't walk. We can't do anything. We're helpless when we were born. And somehow or another, the way that we're trained by our family, we stay helpless. We are told what to do. Pick up your toys. Put away your things. Clean your room. And then we have to be told to go to school. You gotta go to school. How many people actually enjoyed going to the first grade, second grade? Anybody here? We might have liked it because it was new. The first day we liked it. Second day maybe. Third day it gets old. By the end of the year, we have to say, oh, well, at least when I graduate from first grade, I'll get some value. Second grade. And then over and over, year by year, we go to school. We don't even want to go to school. In fact, the best part of school is recess. And I hear they're taking that away too. Who's taking it away? The almighty school board, right? The 6-year-old, the 7-year-old, he has no impact upon the school board. It's almighty to him. So we stay a victim into school, then we stay a victim through high school, victim of the bullies, victim of the teachers, victim of the police sometimes, victim of the parents, and then we graduate, and now we're the victim of the rest of the society. So we remain in that mentality of being a victim. The practice of the Buddha is to teach us to come out of that mentality of being a victim and start seeing that you are actually already okay. You don't need a darn thing from them except the air you breathe. That's the only thing that we need, and they can't stop you from doing that. They're almighty, but not when it comes to taking the air away. Well, sometimes the factories and the uh, energy plants, or maybe the motor bikes and cars on the road try to pollute the air, but they can't take it away. So with that, we recognize that we're already okay. We've got air to breathe. If you could keep that attitude, everything is all right. The only problem that I've got is actually the unwholesome thoughts along with the victim's mentality. This is the basic teaching of the Buddha right there. Dukkha is something that you make with your unwholesome thoughts and your unwholesome attitude. And dukkha nirodha is you can change that. You change it. Over and over and over again, we have to practice coming out of that habit of being a victim. Over and over and over again, we practice being okay. This is the main teaching of the Buddha, that you can come out of your dissatisfaction as soon as you see it. So be on guard. Start watching what your mind is doing. because you can come out of the dissatisfaction. You could come into a state of everything is all right, everything is fine. But if you keep having unwholesome thoughts one after another, especially when you begin to see how ineffective your unwholesome thoughts are, you'll go into a state of despair. You'll go into a state of depression. You're going into a state of the dark night of the soul because you manufactured it. You made your own dark night of the soul. You made your own despair by having unwholesome thoughts one after another, and seeing that those unwholesome thoughts don't get me what I want. The only way that you're going to get what you want is by stop wanting stuff and be satisfied with what you've got now. That's the only way to do it. Over and over and over again, you practice this. So, Eric, are you still here? The screen is bouncing around. Yeah, I see you up there, Eric. What do you think? Can you change your mind?
I think the question, I like the way you posed it earlier, was can I take responsibility for my dissatisfaction? I'm going to try.
Well, that's a no loser's attitude. That's a victim's attitude. I'll try. The answer is, really, the correct answer is I'll do it. And I'll do it again. And I'll do it again. And I'll do it again. Every time I remember, I'm going to do it.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who sees that I'm a loser. That's all I got to say.
Well, everybody's a loser. We were trained losers. I was a well-trained loser.
Say more about that.
Our society trains us to be losers. It trains us to stay in the victim's position that we're born in.
Yes, this is exactly what's been troubling me is all this societal conditioning. That the fact is I can dislike it. I can work to renounce that and to drop it but I don't feel that I'm attached to it. But the fact is, yeah, I think Scott needs to say something here.
Yeah, Scott, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I used to have, thoughts of, because of my life is in this situation, that makes me a loser. And thinking of yourself or viewing yourself with that attitude does make you a loser. So like what I'm trying to say is the only thing that makes you a loser is the belief that you're a loser. You could be a winner. It's like all in your head, it's a mindset that even if you're in the lowest caste of society, you could be a champion and noble, like the king of your own little pile of dirt. Dhammarato used to say. So
yes, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, it's 100% a mindset. It has nothing to do with any of your circumstances or conditions, because all of that's not self. All of that's the Almighty. Like this is God, like happening perfectly just how it should. So I should feel good about that. And like a champion sees the way things are. If it's shitty, it's shitty, but you're a champion of the shittiness,
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, Scott. Everyone is an emperor, a king, an emperor of their own pile of dirt. Everyone is an emperor of their own pile of dirt. The question is, are you going to be buried under your pile of dirt? That's how most people live. Are you going to be crying your way out of your pile of dirt, clawing your way out of your own pile of dirt? Or are you just going to sit on top of your world? Can you actually have the attitude, I'm on top of the world. I'm a champion of this world. I created this world, this pile of shit, this pile of dirt. I created it. It's my past. But you can crawl out of it easily. In fact, it's so easy, it's not even crawling or clawing your way out of it. You just pop right to the top. Every time you change your mind from an unwholesome thought, you're buried under your pile of dirt. And when you change your mind to a happy state, you're on top of the world. But when you say something like, I'll try to practice, that's like clawing your way out. You're still half buried in it. So don't try to do it, just do it. It's easy to do, but we have to repeat it over and over and over again. That in fact, in Buddhism, they use the word concentration, but they generally use it wrongly. We think of concentration as doing something one time really intensely. But the way they use the word concentration is that we do it very lightly, but we do it over and over and over again. We take another breath and we take another wholesome thought again and again and again and again. Just like a child is concentrating on her homework, maybe she's got 10 examples to do on her arithmetic homework. She does the first one, and then she watches TV, plays with her teddy bear, gets her cell phone out. No, to actually concentrate means is that you do the second one, and then you do the third one, and then you do the fourth one until you're finished. All right, well, that's what meditation is actually all about. There may be a higher number. We may, in fact, have to practice 10,000 times. We may have to practice 100,000 times to have happy thoughts. Why? Because you've had millions of unhappy thoughts. You've had millions of unwholesome thoughts. So now it's time to practice having happy, wholesome thoughts until they become the habit. And when you build the habit of having happy, wholesome thoughts, that makes the practice really easy. In fact, it becomes part of your energy. In the beginning, it takes right noble effort, but that effort becomes unremitting. It becomes energetic. When I say, oh, I hate that. Oh, I saw that. I don't hate it at all. I'm not in a state of hatred. I'm okay. There's no reason to hate whatever it was that I hated for a tenth of a second. I can come right out of that. So that's the correct practice. It's not a matter of sitting on the floor, sitting on a cushion, straining your back, making your back hurt, your knees hurt, waiting for the bell to ring is how we normally see meditation. That's why I tend not to use the word meditation and use the word practice. Right, correct, noble practice can be done anywhere. You can be driving your car and watching the road, seeing what's out there. You can, in fact, when you're driving the car, all the other cars and all the other traffic and the billboards and people walking on the streets, that's part of your almighty. You can't tell those other drivers what to do. When people try, they call it road rage, get arrested for that. But while you're driving the car, you can pay attention to what you're doing. You can pay attention to the cars in front of you instead of running into the back of them. Pay attention to what's happening around you, both on the inside and the outside. So if you're driving your car on the way to an interview, the thoughts you'll have is, I've got this wired. I can handle that interview easy. And I can drive myself safely getting there. And I watch all of the traffic happily. Number one reason in the U.S. as to why why the accident rate is so high is because people are not watching. They're not mindful. They're not paying attention. There's all kinds of things to distract them. Billboards, girls in short skirts on some street corners, all kinds of things that's going to prevent us from seeing the reality of the traffic. So what we can do is pay attention. This would be right noble practice while driving a car, right noble practice while walking. In fact, the monks practice it doing it barefoot. If you're going to do what you would call a walking meditation, the way to do it is barefoot. Why? Because you may step on a nail, step on a spider, step on a screw, step on a leaf that's got thorns on it. So the right thing to do is when you're out walking barefoot, pay attention to every footstep. Pay attention to every footfall. be careful to not step in that stuff. That's the way to practice walking meditation, is to do it barefoot so that you can pay attention to what you're doing. Now, that leads me back to one of the old jokes. Let's say that you're out on walking meditation and you see a dog pile right in front of you. Some sorts of meditation, like choiceless awareness. Oh, I'm aware of that dog turd, but I'm choiceless about it. They wind up stepping right on it. Got it squishy all between your toes, on the bottom of their foot, etc., like that. That's a meditation. Choiceless awareness. Just step right in your own mental dog shit. That's having unwholesome thoughts. And then the other one, which is they call the noting method, the Mahasi method, is you see that dog turd right in front of you, and they'll say, wow, that's unwholesome. Let me look at it. And so they pick it up, take it into their kitchen, slice it, dice it, mix it with powder, fry it in the frying pan, and eat it. That's what the Mahasi method is. No wonder they have a dark night of the soul, because they keep eating their own bullshit. The right way to handle it is when you're walking down the street doing walking meditation barefoot and you see that dog pile right in front of you, is just step out of its way. Don't step in it. Leave it alone. That's the way that we practice correctly. Don't step in your own mess. Don't get buried under your own pile of dirt. Stay on top of it. That's the correct way of practicing, moment by moment by moment. I've had many students say, oh, well, I had a wholesome thought like everything is okay and I'm satisfied. And then I tell myself, oh, I don't believe it. Oh, that's not true. That's just the old habits coming back in. Can you catch that habit coming back a second time and say, aha, I see that. And guess what? Everything really is okay. Everything is fine. Not a problem in the world. And then another unwholesome thought will come in. You're full of crap. Well, that thought is, for sure. And you can say, aha, I see that I am actually destroying my own practice of meditation. Aha, I see you. Let's come back and start practicing wholesome thoughts again. Everything is okay. Everything is fine. When you have fear, you can say, aha, I see that fear. And guess what? It's probably a false positive. I'm probably not in real danger. I just have the feeling of fear. Unappropriately. Let me take a deep breath and tell myself there's nothing to fear. Everything is fine. I can't fix it. Whatever it was that I was afraid of is part of the Almighty, but it's not dangerous. Just because I thought it was dangerous doesn't make it dangerous. And so we can come right out of that fear and say, wow, what a relief it is. There really is no danger here. There's no alligators on the floor. There's no crocodiles. There's snakes not crawling up your leg. You don't have tarantula spiders on your keyboard. Everything in the room that you're in is okay, not dangerous. What a relief it is. I don't have a dangerous, almighty universe to live in. It's not dangerous. The only danger is my dangerous thoughts. The only fear is the fear itself. So we can come out of that. You can see your fear and say, aha, I see that fear. Let us say that the car in front of you while you're driving, the brake lights come on. You put your brake lights on too. You stop yourself. Maybe it's an emergency stop, but you can't have to blame the guy for making an emergency stop. He may just be playing with you. He's playing road rage. You don't have to become rageful. That's your choice. You can just stop. He stopped, you can stop. Don't run into him.
Yeah, I
But you
used to
have
get
to
road
watch it.
rage. I
Go
used to
ahead.
get road rage, and now almost never, after practicing over and over. Like, okay, oh, somebody cuts you off. That's okay. Just let
It's
them
all
go.
right.
Well, it's
Yeah.
fine. We're all gonna get there, eventually. what's the rush?
But if
you
he
know?
catches you off and you're not watching, that may cause an accident.
Right.
But recognize that it's you that caused the accident because you weren't watching when he cut you off.
Yeah.
Be alert. Be aware. This is the practice, and it needs to be done any and every time that you remember. And sometimes it's a good idea to be mindful while you're in certain activities. When you're operating a hay baler, watch what you're doing. When you're driving a car, watch what you're doing. When you're cutting a loaf of bread with a knife, watch what you're doing. When you're putting stuff in your blender, make sure that it's not your hands that you're putting in the blender. Watch what you're doing. Watch the thoughts. Watch your actions. And if you continue to do that and get in the habit of it, you're going to have a happy, marvelous life. That's the real teaching of the Buddha, is everything is okay already. That almighty universe that we live in, yeah, it really is almighty, but it's my job to pay attention to what's happening in that almighty universe. So, does anybody have any questions? Anybody have any remarks? Santiago, where are you, man? What you got to say? Yes, I'm listening. Go ahead and turn your mic on. Oh, you've got no mic.
No mic.
All right, Basil, how about you? You got anything to say?
No questions. Everything is all right.
Everything is all right. Everything is fine. The Almighty, the everything is okay. How about you, Dylan?
No questions from me.
Pardon?
No questions from me.
I didn't hear what he said. Mikey, can you help?
He said no questions from him.
All right. Ben, how you doing?
Good, thank you. No questions. The Almighty is all righty.
No. Okay, Michael Greenback, how about you? Got your hand up.
Yeah, I do. I see the value in doing it through daily life, and it seems I am curious how it relates to sitting practice, in addition to trying to do that every moment. Whether it almost sounds like the Zen idea of already enlightened or of instantly enlightened, and sitting simply being. Is it like it's just easier?
Well, they're correct. You already are enlightened. Just your problem is you don't think so. So stop having those kind of thoughts and recognize you're already okay.
So then is the sitting simply enjoying that? Is it easier to be just existing in that happiness undistracted, not trying to do something else?
All right. Here's the answer to that. There's two ways of doing it. The first one is the new Zen monk walks into the dojo and sees his master sitting there. And he comes up and he says, Master, are you practicing to become enlightened? And after a second, he opened one eye and then he says, No, I'm just sitting here because I'm already enlightened. All right. So that's the reason why one should be sitting there. But people go to retreats thinking that sitting is going to make them enlightened. That's why they have the dark night of the soul ahead of them, is because just sitting doesn't get them what they want. Now, the second part of that has to do with the Buddha highly recommends going into seclusion. Driving a car really is not in seclusion, but going to a hut, an empty hut, going to your own bedroom and closing the door, closing your eyes, going to a foot of a tree, going to a forest, getting away from other people, the one thing that we begin to recognize immediately is that we brought almighty things with us. They're in the mind. We brought it all with us. So the first thing that we have to practice then after we get in seclusion is to practice getting into seclusion. We have to practice to throw all of that stuff out. And in fact, I would highly recommend that you spend, maybe 10 minutes at a time, 5 or 6 times a day, of getting into seclusion, closing your eyes, and throwing all of those unwholesome, worldly, almighty thoughts out of the mind, and just have happy thoughts. Everything is okay. Well, I got no work to do. Let us say that you're at your office and you've got a deadline of 2 hours from now. And you can close your eyes for 5 minutes and say, wow, I can take a break. I don't have to finish that. I don't have to think about that deadline right now. I'm okay. And we keep practicing that way. And pretty soon, between those sessions, we begin to remember more often. But in fact, it's really good to work in seclusion. It's much more difficult to practice this out in the world. And so the better thing to do is to start practicing in seclusion, closing your eyes, folding the laptop lid down. Just do some things on the bus. Close your eyes. Don't look out the window. Just practice. This bus ride is okay. No problems, no worries left. Everything is all right. So we practice alone, just like someone who is learning to play the piano. The kid who is learning and struggling to play the piano, he doesn't even want his mother in the room. He wants to do that silently on his own. And when he gets pretty good at it, now he can take it and play his little song that he learned. And mommy invites Aunt Susie in, and she says, little Johnny, play that song that you know for Aunt Susie. And now he's performing. All right. You practice on your own so that you learn to perform in public. And when you get really good at it, then it becomes not a performance anymore. It becomes your life. You begin to play with it. This is why they talk about play music. Only people who are well skilled in music can play it. Everybody else is either performing or practicing in public. So we have that 3-step process. You have to practice in private and then perform in public until you get really good and comfortable. And then you can play in public. But you can start to practice in public. But it's better to practice also in private to get rid of that baggage. When you're driving your car, you're carrying all of those cars and all that traffic with you. But when you get into private, you can throw all of that traffic out. You don't need to think about the traffic. You don't have to watch that. You can just watch your own thoughts. It's much easier to practice in seclusion. I find that quite amusing as far as retreats go, because the Buddha says to practice in seclusion, and it says, okay, do a meditation retreat. You're in a hall now with 100 people. You're not practicing seclusion. You're pretending that you're in seclusion. And every girl that coughs and every girl that shows her knee and every boy that hits you on the back or stammers or stutters, all of those people, you're just pretending that you're in seclusion. The better thing to do is to be in real seclusion so that you only have your own mind to deal with. And practice and practice and practice, throwing out all those unwholesome thoughts. And practice some more and practice some more. And pretty soon you get pretty good at it. But all the while, those of you who are not living in a wat, not living in a temple, we actually have to do a mixture of practicing in public and then practice in seclusion, and practice in public and practice in seclusion. And pretty soon we get good enough to where we can actually perform in public. And then when you're an arahat, that means that you're playing all the time. You're watching all the time. You're mindful. You can see those thoughts as they come up and say, aha, I see you. And they say, you can see those thoughts before they even open their mouth. Arahats are really slow to speech. They don't speak much because they're too busy watching what's going on. And that's a really nice state, but you don't have to practice to get into that state. You practice to remove the unwholesome thoughts in your mind and have only wholesome thoughts. And fairly soon, one wholesome thought after another wholesome thought after another wholesome thought, you can begin to put some gaps in those wholesome thoughts to where there's nothing happening between them. Now, people who are in despair, they will actually sometimes have let us say, have gaps in those unwholesome thoughts. But when they have another thought, it's unwholesome. And then they'll have another gap, and then the next thought will be unwholesome again. And meanwhile, their state of mind is a terrible state of mind. It's a state of mind in depression and delusion. But we can put gaps in the thoughts. The question is can you have a wholesome thought, put it a gap between them, and then have another wholesome thought? This is correct practice. This, in fact, when you can do that, to have a wholesome thought, put a gap in it, and then have another wholesome thought, that's when you're in the state of play. That's when you're really enjoying your life. Does that make sense for you, Michael?
Yes, it does. It's amazing. I mean, I thank you for reminding me that I had figured out years ago it was possible to just be happy, and I've had meditations where I feel like a king or an emperor, just this incredible, like, large, magnanimous sense, and I told myself that it was delusion, that it's like I'm creating a fantasy, I'm creating another.
You are, but when you said that you're creating a delusion, that's also a deluded thought. That's an unwholesome thought. So which would you rather have? The fantasy that everything is marvelous and wonderful, or the delusion and the fantasy that everything's a pile of shit? You're not happy. That's the whole point, is that these very happy, wholesome thoughts are almost always followed by unwholesome, unhappy thoughts. It's not real, it's delusion. And in fact, that statement, it's not real, it's not delusion, that's the delusion. The real fact is that we live in a paradise. The planet Earth is just fine. Society sucks. When we talk about the world, there's three different ways of looking at the world. One is the planet Earth. The planet Earth is okay. It's got no problems. It's got a really bad skin rash called humanity. The planet Earth would be better off without humans, but it's okay with humans too. It's just got a skin rash. And then the second kind of world is all of that society out there, all of those unhappy people who don't recognize that their society is what they created. And then the third kind of world is the one that we really need to pay attention to, and that is our immediate environment. If you can only see 50 meters away, then your world is only 50 meters by 50 meters, radius of 50. So the people that are in your world are the ones that you can see, touch, taste, contact, smell. That's the real world, is the world of your senses and the world of your mind. Yes, go ahead, Scott.
I just wanted to talk about something Michael was saying about that feeling of really being a champion, of being on top of it all. The Buddha talks about this. I think it's called Alokatara, or above the world. And the thing to realize is it's not a delusion of grandeur, because this practice of coming out of your own suffering is super mundane, not shared by ordinary people. And there's a real power to it. And I think if we have these moments of profound realization, instead of taking credit for it and like identifying with it, that's just the Almighty happening too. That's not me. That's not mine. So there's no problem of a delusion of grandeur. Like there's no problem of the ego taking credit for it, you know, because it's just part of the beautiful play that you realize is happening here.
Exactly. In a way, we could say, just enjoy the show. Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage, and each one of us is a player, an actor. How many of you have heard that? I think everybody's heard that one. All right. Here's the point, is that everybody who is on stage actually is reading a script. The script that we're reading is our childhood, it's our thoughts, it's our memories, it's our unwholesome thoughts and everything like that. So the first thing that we need to do is to close that book, stop living according to a script, and then we can see that everybody around us is just acting according to the script that they're reading. And the best thing to do then is to get off of that stage and go sit in the audience. The funny part about it is, in this theater, you're the only one in the audience. Everybody else is on stage. They're not in the audience. And so the audience is empty. It's only got nobles. And then what are you going to do? You're just going to enjoy the show. Just enjoy the show. Most people, they say, oh, I don't like this show. I want my money back. I want to fix it. I want this actor and that actor to do a different scenario. They have to read my script. They can't read theirs. And the reality is that everybody's going to read their own script. The only job you have is just enjoy the show. You can think of that big stage that Shakespeare is talking about. That's the Almighty. Just enjoy the show. Almighty is putting on quite a show. Just enjoy the show. Just enjoy your own wholesome thoughts. All the world's a stage. Just enjoy the show. Jordan, do you have any comments?
Hello. Yeah, it's been a while. It's nice to see everyone. Yeah, I've taken a break from all my normal stuff. I've been on vacation visiting family, and coming here and hearing you talk made me realize that I've been wanting a lot of things that I can't have right now, and that's been not a very skillful way of living my life. Although I've been really, I've been grateful that I've been able to take a break, but yeah, I need to remember to keep in mind that doesn't make sense to want something I don't have, because it doesn't help me to want it. So I can just just like what you're saying, practice just wanting what I have now and sort of just enjoying.
Excellent. Glad that you're getting some value out of it. Andrew, do you have any remarks to make?
Good, thank you.
Anything more?
I'll add one thing. When you're talking about driving around, I noticed one thing when I started to practice the Dharma. I started getting less speeding tickets. I don't know if anyone else has that experience. Hardly. I used to get a lot of speeding tickets, and then very, very seldom do I. I'm just more aware of. Even if I do speed, I notice the speeding camera more. But yeah, I'm just more aware of my surroundings, and also more aware of not being in a rush.
Yeah, be aware. Remember that there is a police mafia out there that is going to bust you. And pay attention to how you're driving. Good plan. So, Alexander, you've been enjoying this, I can tell. You have any comments?
Just thank you so much for the talk, and thank you so much to all of our friends for showing up. Appreciate everyone here so much. Thank you.
Ah, great. So, Dhammadas, you got any last things to say?
Just thank you and pleasure to see everybody.
Yes, good to see you. Mikey, wrap this thing up.
Yeah, Michael G, I'd like to invite you to check out the Introduction to Buddhadasa on Dhammarato's YouTube channel. It's on the homepage of the YouTube channel. And anybody listening to this video as well, if you haven't checked out that playlist, go ahead and give it a watch. We've got some great videos on there introducing people to the Buddha Dhamma as it is taught here and by the Buddha. Dhammarato has recently been updating navigation on the website, in particular the website menu, both on desktop and on mobile. So please go check it out and give us some feedback. Let us know how you find navigating the website, and go look around, play with things, message some people, create some posts.
On the poll page, there is a survey. Please take the survey. Play with the website, check it out, get to know it, and so that you've got some information, and then take the survey. It's on the poll page at the bottom. So please take the... Yeah, Alexandra, have you taken that poll yet? Have you taken our survey?
I'm not sure. I'll check, and if I haven't, I will.
Okay. If you have, it'll take you to your own survey. Everybody, this is the Google survey system, so it works. In the sense that you can change your own old survey. Andrew, I invite you to take that poll. Take the survey. So everybody, thank you so much. I appreciate it. This has been a marvelous, happy moment for me. I like it when I see so many smiling faces. That shows that you got the Dhamma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhammarato. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
everybody.